And then everyone can hear you then. Give me 1 second. Yeah, we're having all kinds of issues. Folks, joining us right here is Mike from around the world. Mike, we're having a ton of weird issues, almost paranormal. I don't want to even say that, but it's demonic, maybe?
Well, a couple of days ago, COT was uploading the international site, and it would not upload. It would not. This is our 10th attempt. And I have pretty good cyber... something's going on with that.
You have pretty good cyber...
Kung Fu.
Clues?
Kung Fu.
Oh, okay. Turn it up for me, Israel. I can't hear him. So, Mike, you're experiencing it. We're experiencing it. Is the weather got anything to do with this, or is there something more nefarious going on?
Well, I tell you what. When you talk about the weather these days, there's a lot that really needs to come out so that people can be well versed in the potentials of what's going on. And could it have something to do with electronics? Well, there were some uploads to all digital platforms last week. Everybody has AI in their devices. And as this AI learns and grows and manages, you can expect all devices, any device that has a chipset, a processor and coprocessor, or a microcontroller unit, which is just about everything, you can expect strange behavior, especially if it is networked in any way. If it's radio operated, meaning not quite an infrared remote, but a radio remote, or if it can somehow pick up Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, you're going to have issues. That's an entry port into the chipset. So it's communicating with everything else. So, and most everything we have these days, all these smart devices and everything else, they're smart, all right. They're going to cause us to pull our hair out.
So you're saying all this interference and stuff happening here, like when we started tonight, the screen behind us went haywire on us. The microphones started moving up and down on their own. The air conditioning was off. Just weird stuff started happening. You're saying that the AI, you're trying to tell me that the machines are talking to each other?
Oh, yeah.
Could they send a message to one of the components here, Mike, to tell it to do something with us?
With audio equipment, you have a lot of small, what's called operational amplifiers in audio equipment, which control just about everything. And that's your connections, communications, volume, pans, your tones. Most of it has digital overlays because it's no longer now, unless you have analog equipment, that's not going to be affected too much, but everything else is going to be, because as it tunes itself, it's going to send out some real wild signals. Microwaves are off the chain. I normally carry a device that measures microwaves, not for AI, but for a different reason. But they're off the chain. They're all over the place. Some microwaves are emanating from space, but the majority of them comes from communication bursts.
Is 5G causing more interference, or is it really non-factor?
Actually, 5G is quite clean right now. Right now it is. Just think of 5G as a very wide tunnel that machines can talk to each other on and send much more information back and forth. The problem with 5G is the cell structure of how they erect the towers, because they can triangulate. Every single phone now is triangulated. When you talk on your phone, your position is mapped, right? Your exact location. Even the height off the ground the phone is. And that is very important when connecting to another device. So the towers know where that device is all the time, no matter where you go. And so through that and redundant systems, that they didn't mention. All these things are communicating and just bombarding the lower, surface with all sorts of waves. And radio waves, of course, they just continue to go around the Earth on a continuous basis. So we have we're in a bubble, basically.
Mike, also, let's move into some other areas, and that's the equinox coming up this Sunday. First day of spring. It's the spring equinox. We have a massive asteroid that Mr. BBB 333 is calling the equinox asteroid because it's it's about 3/4 of a mile wide. It will not hit us. It's going to miss us by about 5.3 lunar distance. But each time it comes around, it gets closer. And also, we're going to be hit with, but it's traveling 76,000 miles an hour. We're also going to get inundated with solar winds from a southern hole in the sun's atmosphere, but the winds are unbelievable, 600 kilometers per second. That's going to hit us the same day. Why is it always that it seems like the equinox or the solstice always have combining issues from the cosmos?
Well, it's kind of like you could think of it as actually that's per our position. But it just so happens that the spring equinox is almost like you peeking over a rock, right? Before you peek over the rock, you can't see anything. Once you peek over the rock, you can see everything. And whatever you can see, you can potentially kind of touch, I guess you could say. So the equinox is the same way. It's like a shadow. Before shadow is cast over a rock, it must first be below the rock. It doesn't affect anything, but in less than a few seconds, all of a sudden, the sun beams in over the rock, warming up everything. So the equinox is somewhat like that. Just think of it as the sun being behind a sand dune, right, in a hot desert. So in the shade of that desert, it's like, 40 degrees. As soon as the sun comes up, which only takes, once it's at the peak of that dune, it's a few seconds, and all of a sudden the ground heats up to 90 degrees. So the equinox is just like that shadow. It will allow, the way we're positioned, it allows all these cosmic rays and everything else to slam into us just within a couple of hours' time. So it's pretty extreme. We can expect this time, though, I would expect some sort of failure in the air this time with aircraft. I would. That'll give us a gauge as far as the intensity of some of these galactic cosmic rays.
So you think that? Are you saying there could possibly be like a major airliner crash on that day?
Some sort of aircraft, some sort of a avionics failure is no doubt it'll take place, because when you go from being in the shadow of these galactic cosmic rays, potentially, or somewhat, not potentially, and then going to a much higher rate of being exposed to them, you're going to have a reaction in the upper atmosphere. So anything flying there could potentially fail. So I would expect a failure of avionics, and that'll be a gauge. No crashes so far, right? So if that day comes and we have some accident or something like that, it'd be very unfortunate. But that'll be a good gauge to see. I hate to sound that way, but it will give us a gauge to see how much we're being exposed to. The sun, likewise, will also react as it normally does. So we're going to see.
Folks, we got Mike from around the world with us tonight, and we're going to also ask him a question here, because on that same day is the little green file, Mike, from 2 years ago that Stephen Bendanoon gave us, that we brought forward at the Cincinnati conference, and then the next year on our webinar, Heidi went ahead and brought it out. I know she sent you a copy of it. She put a lot of details up and PowerPoint, brought it forward. These 4 NASA scientists. Prior to that, Mike, no one in the public had ever heard about a debris field coming our direction. Now, you have confirmed that it's definitely coming, that there's 2 huge clouds, I think you call them debris clouds. It's filled with meteorites, asteroids, and all kinds of debris. I understand that, I'm not sure if exactly this day, but around this day, it's going to start hitting what they call the Jupiter collision. Do you have any info for us on the date of when the collision will begin, or has the collision begun? I know the 21st is the date that was on the green file. Well,
as far as confirming, I can say this year, our window of leisure is gone. It's just gone. So, that date could very well be one of those dates of expectancy that could potentially take place. I can't be exact because if anybody out there would have to tell you this, anybody who has, if you're a read-in, if you've been read in, right, you can't, there's no way I could.
You can't go there. I mean, in other words, what you're saying is you can't answer my question and tell me what you know exactly because it's classified.
Well, if anybody out there has been read in, they know they know what that entails, and that term again is read in.
Yeah.
So
okay. So we're not going to push you. Yeah, we're not going to push for that. We're looking for.
But it's okay. It's okay.
What I'm trying to do, and you know how I've done for 8 years. I've always pushed the envelope a little bit. But
you're fine with that. You're fine with that.
So my question is, let's rephrase it. Are we approaching this 2 million mile? Is this 2 million?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
We are approaching it fast. We're approaching it fast. Now, listen, Pastor Paul, this is going to cause some issues in more ways than one. And it really, it is, it's going to be a strange paradigm. I'll put it that way. Fact number one, let's go through a scenario so we can see this realistically.
All right.
Suppose these inbounds do start coming, and the U.S. or any other country has technology to attempt to handle it. That's an exposure of technology. To date, no one has exposed their technology. That I know for a fact. No one has exposed the real technology. Case in point, there's some things that have been accomplished back in October of '54. We don't need rocket engines. That's a fact. That's not fantasy. That's a fact. And sooner or later, certain things are going to be bought out actually, they've already been bought out, but nobody cares. Believe it or not. Just about everybody has seen what has been developed by U.S. forces. They've seen it already, but nobody cares. And the story, of course, was quickly retracted. They put it out there, so it does not mess with my read-in status. So they put it out there, and it was retracted. That was compliments of Harry Reid, but and Rubio did that actually. Trump tried to educate the public, but the public can't hear too well concerning that. It's unfortunate. You can't go into great detail with that, but they've already put it out there.
You're saying we don't need, since 1954, we don't need to use rockets?
No, and that's actually, believe it or not, that's somewhat common. That's common knowledge in huge circles. So, but here's the issue: when you bring out developed technology like that, there's an issue. Here's the issue of secrecy, and this is why secrecy is so important. In a way, if that technology comes out, and because it does not use standard propulsion, right? The scientist from every single company is going to say, "How are you doing this?" Right? How are you doing this?
Yeah.
They're going to have to release that. Okay, when they tell them how, in about 24 hours, when these companies find out this information, that will discourage all markets. All markets of petroleum are going to be up in the air. And so that'll be a nightmare because that's an uncontrollable situation. Just like the SR-71 Blackbird, they kept it secret. They kept a couple other things secret that the public knows about. And they did that because not only did they not want the enemies to know what they were doing, but most of all, they didn't want companies in the U.S. to find out they had achieved certain ways to evade radar systems. They did not want American companies to know that right away, because if that were the case, if they had known back then, they would have been upset and angry, and the markets would have crashed a bit. Because that provided a lot of jobs, and that would have messed us up economically. The war machine was massive back in those days, and it employed quite a few companies, and it subcontracted many, many more. And so to just withdraw that would have caused many people to go into unemployment. It would have upset the markets, and we could have had, we would have had a severe, depression again. So they don't want that to repeat itself. Not to mention, most of the people who were responsible back then for evoking secrecy, they have died out.
Yeah, let's talk about. I'm thinking in my mind when you bring up 1954, I immediately think of von Braun. He gave us the first rocket ship. He basically helped bring about NASA. I mean, we brought him over here during World War II. We brought him out of Germany. So did von Braun? Is this 0-point energy? I don't know if that's the right term.
No, 0-point energy is a misnomer. It really is a misnomer.
Okay.
It's not. That's a term used to describe something that hardly anybody can describe. Let's put it this way. Everybody saw that little. I believe everybody saw that Tic Tac vehicle, right?
Tic Tac vehicle? No.
The little Tic Tac thing that was above the water they released, and they said, the Air Force pilots were following this thing. Okay, so, but a lot of people, they don't know what to make of that.
Right.
But it was flying in our airspace, and the pilots were following it. But there's the audio track. There was a lot more said. There were post briefings. It's much more into the documents concerning this thing. And, it's somewhat, it moved not like somebody navigating a craft. It was more like a probe, right?
Okay.
So back in 1963, there's also some additional footage of a device that weighs about 2.5 tons. It does not use standard propulsion. It rose up 6 feet at a dead stop in about 1 second. It moved to the left 400 feet in 5 seconds. It moved to the right 400 feet in that 5 seconds back to its starting position. It can move in any angle. It does not use standard propulsion. They accomplished this a long time ago. It's already been released, but it's like nobody cares to look at it. It was made by, I believe at the time that was Skunk Works, and they were contracted to utilize a certain type of propulsion. They replaced it, of course, for this experiment, but it was it's so accurate. It explains a lot of what people have been seeing in Colorado.
Yep.
It explains what the ranchers have been seeing and complaining about.
Yep.
But it should give insight that this stuff doesn't come from out there. This stuff comes from us. But where the story behind that is, those same companies pay all the archaeologists. How about that?
Okay.
And there you go.
Yeah.
So man is inspired by what man sees. Okay, it's not like we come up with anything new. We are inspired to do what we do. And there you go. That's the whole story. But in order for this stuff to come all the way out, it would take a heavenly catastrophe of great magnitude, because once it is exposed, there are some pretty smart people out there that are going to say, how did you do this? How'd you do this? Even the beast, he's going to be the one that brings this stuff out during some very tumultuous times. And so
now we're getting into some. So in other words, this technology that's been around for a while, hidden, maybe only being used militarily, maybe, or experimentally and militarily. The beast is going to introduce it. I mean, the Bible talks about the lying signs and wonders. In other words, they could say that they're doing something supernaturally or call it alien technology, when really it may be, and I'm just saying, maybe it's technology that we developed ourselves, or maybe we got it, maybe we did get it from fallen angel technology, okay? Maybe we did, I don't know, but you're saying the beast is going to roll this thing out and use it.
Oh, he'll use quite a bit of it. And the sad part is this. Let's just for the sake of argument, if there was a device that could travel 500 miles under the water without disturbing the water, right, that would be fascinating to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right? Well, you can take your microwave oven with a pool and demonstrate that same concept at about 50 miles an hour underwater with a microwave oven. That seems like that's outrageous, right? It is not. The magnetron in that microwave oven is enough to cavitate the water molecules, which can actually cause a cavitation bubble around that microwave, right, a little bit, and you can push that microwave right to the bottom of a pool, and the microwave will not get wet, nor will it shut off or do anything until that magnetron overheats. And then, of course, it's going to be at the bottom of your pool. But it will go down to the bottom of that pool in a snap of a finger that fast. You can do that with a microwave oven. So that technology is just fine-tuned. It's just certain technological ways of employing electrons in various configurations to achieve certain means. Again, this technology is not going to be let out to the public, because then you have major companies who would say, well, how are you doing this? And then at that point, it would be chaos.
Well,
Everybody,
if that's okay, and going with that concept, then that means this whole green initiative about carbon and all of this from the gas, from the tailpipes and everything, is a farce. Man-made carbon pollution, because we've already got technology that can eliminate all that. That's not what's causing climate chaos. And I'm going to bring this up. Iceland, for instance. Heidi brought this up today. There's what's called a sulfur dioxide that's so unbelievable right now over Iceland. They've had 50,000 earthquakes since February 28th. And the sulfur dioxide is off the charts from volcanism. Mike, you've been talking, as a matter of fact, the Tal volcano is urgently, very, very on the verge of eruption in the Philippines. And I'm sure there's other hot spots in the world. So what is the sulfur dioxide? Why is it so dangerous at this time?
Oh, that stuff just wipes out anybody's ability to breathe, and it will kill life. That stuff is poison. At its concentration, it is poison. But again, you have tons of that stuff releasing. In fact, if you start to do a search or you travel the world or something like that, you start going to these places where sulfur dioxide is coming out of other places all the time, where people actually go down to the basins of these volcanic lips, and they extract sulfur from those lips on an every day they do this. You'd say, well, wait a minute. I thought, the carbon footprint was awful and we were causing this by cars and everything else. Well, like I said last week, one volcanic eruption can put out enough carbon that we couldn't replicate in 50 years of our lifetime. Right? It will take us 50 years to put out as much carbon as a volcano can just wash out in a few seconds. So we know it's not. In 2004, this climate chaos thing, it began with the trouble caused from a magnetar. That's where it came from. That is a tragic crisis because there are more magnetars out there that can blow part of this atmosphere off. That's where the ozone problem came from. It came from that magnetar. That's why they had emergency. They called the entire world together and they said, hey, we have a problem. We've seen the result of a magnet. It blew part of our atmosphere off, and nobody knew it. And we have more inbound headed this way. It's the most destructive force that man knows of in the known universe.
Whoa. Is that the 5 waves of energy?
Well, I'll tell you what, we have not had an impact from a magnetron again yet. Pascal, if it hit, it would fry part of this Earth, at least half of the Earth, very quickly. Magnetars are the most dangerous. And the magnetar that blew back a long time ago, it was estimated to be only about 22 feet in diameter, and 1 inch of it cracked. That's how heavy this thing is. That's how much of a magnet or a gravitational pull it has, right? This thing is immensely powerful, and they explode. When they explode, that shock wave travels forever, and it's enough. It was enough to knock off part of our atmosphere, which was real. That was a time when no one could go near part of the poles, because if they did, they would be fried. That's where this global warming thing started from. And what they did was they took it, politicized it, and began to make money off of it.
Mike, let's move in another direction here for a moment. And Russia, okay. So everybody was afraid that President Trump, was going to bring about World War III, with some of his tweets and things he said. But this week, apparently, President Joe Biden has set off a firestorm by referring to President Putin as a killer. Boot-scooting Putin did not take very kind to that and just called back his ambassador. And what is going on? I mean, why is there seems to be an obsession with the current administration, even before they got in power? I mean, we go back to the Congress and Pelosi and, the Russian collusion, confusion, delusion, illusion. Is there some personal reason that Biden's struggling with the Russians, or is there something else going on?
He's really not. He's not. But number one, he's not. Well, just like Russia, because the public cannot prove what Putin is actually saying. They can't prove that. So it's a lot of that is propaganda taken out of context. Biden had a problem with Russia before he was elected president by way of his son, right?
Right.
So any friction between Biden and Russia takes attention off of any type of interaction that happened with his son. That seems more like a tactic, right?
Right.
Putin, his response to come back seemed childlike, didn't it?
It did.
It did. Because I believe I can't remember the quote exactly because it was silly, but Putin said something in the terms of, well, if somebody calls me a name, then that means they're actually the name they called me or something like that.
Yeah, he did have a childish response. A knee-jerk reaction to call back the ambassador. I thought so, too. I thought that was, thank you so much.
Well, it was quite silly. But see, I don't trust the interpretation of that narrative. Maybe that wasn't said at all. That's just what the media is saying, and it's just like speaking about the media, Mr. Trump, President Trump tried to, he kept saying fake media, right?
Right.
He was the reason why he said this. He was saying something without saying it. I think that a lot of people understand that the media has a mandate by sections of the government for propaganda to make the U.S., to make the people in the United States of America view foreign entities a specific way. So in other words, you have to have media on your payroll, basically. Not directly, but right. They're somewhat on the payroll. So that's what President Trump was talking about. Let me give you the interpretation. Media is propaganda. That's what media is, propaganda. Everything that the media is, you have to remember, these guys are being paid millions of dollars to look good, to sit up there in front of television and tell something that we can go ahead and get from the source off the internet if we're, wise enough. So we don't really need that. But these guys are also twisting. They tell a narrative that suits whatever power they work for, period. And we buy it hook, line, and sinker. So I'm saying this because some of the narratives people are about to hear, right? They're going to be off the wall. They're going to be odd. They're going to be very strange. But the truth of it is, the Middle East is not doing so well right now. That's the true status of the Middle East. That really
is true. I mean, Israel's really turning up the heat on Iranian proxies, and Iran is, I think, sneaking around and hitting a couple Israeli ships, and maybe today even did some damage towards some Saudi Arabian facilities. You're saying that this little nickel a dime, this little cat and mouse game that we see being played out right now is just there's a lot bigger problem at hand.
Yes, it is, and it's what we see. What they show in the U.S. is propaganda to have people calm. Right? They don't want to show you everything that's real. They want people to stay calm. Just like the atrocities from ISIS, they didn't show everything ISIS did, and some things were ballooned. But
that's true.
There are other things in the Middle East that are taking place, and they just downplay it because they need America to recover. America needs to go back to living the way it was so we can continue to pay taxes, or some of those folks are not going to be able to prepare. I'm reminded of Revelation every single time when these guys, everybody will go into the mountain. They're going to go hide in their prepared places. So priority number one is for them to continue to work on these prepared places for what will most certainly come. I don't know if everybody's looked, but the atmosphere is changing. Right? Just like everybody's breathing is starting to be altered. I'm sure they can feel it. The new probe that went to Mars, should it send back true information, we're going to notice some footprints, not human, but different types of atmospheric changes that are taking place. Venus has heated up once again, and Jupiter is changing. Its chemical structure is changing. So we have some massive issues going on because our entire solar system is going through a change. We're going to feel the grunt of it because we're going to have a storm problem. And I'll say it again, when the Weather Channel says, and they're trying to downplay it now, everybody ought to take note of this. The Weather Channel has a mandate to calm everybody down concerning storms. So they're going to minimize, and they're going to try to say things that cause people to feel calm about these storms. The truth about it is we're having megastorms already. Megastorms they can't do anything with. And we don't have enough. Most of the weather modification technology, right? I hate to say this, but most of the weather modification technology is not summertime weaponry. That's not what it's for. It is for winter. It's winter-based technology. That's the only type of modification that has ever worked, besides seeding hurricanes to cause them to stop. So when we start to see these big freezes, right, that could be weather modification. That's what the equipment is designed for now. But as far as warm weather, no. And we're about to have a problem with the oceans.
So in other
words, we're going to have a
words,
problem with the oceans and other things.
Yeah. So in other words, really, man-made weather modification is more effective during winter months than using ice and snow and sleet and that kind of thing. Where in the summer, yeah, maybe you can do some seeding in above the hurricanes to stall them, and then they do rain bombs, like we've seen Harvey do. What happened to Houston. And I'm not saying that that's what happened there, but it sure acted like it, okay? It sure did. I don't know the answer. But so let me ask you a question. If all these things are happening and Putin and Biden have to sidestep each other, there might be some personal reasons here. There's a couple things that's happening this week, Mike, that we have to ask you about. One is, there's no question. I've seen it myself. Biden is walking down what looks like walking down a trail toward reporters outside. But then when he gets up to them, his hand goes out, and it's obviously a green screen. So I don't know who he was talking to. Maybe he had a few actors in the room with him. But this looked like, and then he starts walking away toward the Marine One, and then he gets covered up by a lot of people in the way, and that's the end of it. Is there a reason? Is this part of this, what's called the Smith-Mundt Act, where the media could be purposely releasing false information to be disseminated among the public? This act was first passed in 1948 and then was re-modified under the Obama administration in 2012 that gives the media the okay to release misinformation, fake news media, basically. But they're doing it because they have to push a certain agenda on behalf of the government. Are we witnessing this right now playing out in front of us?
That act, Pascal, that act, I believe that's H.R. 5736, and it was modified five different sections. What it does is it appoints a physician in government specifically for media. Right, media outlets. That means movies.
Yeah.
That means radio. That means YouTube. That means YouTube entities. That means any entertainment company. What they do is they run interference with international policies. A lot is what they do. So they can actually, what it does is it prohibits interference from within the government to stop certain programs that are could be started for whatever reason. The document clarifies some of they had a lot of amendments in there, and they're talking about more amendments even now. But it is to run a cover, right? Run a cover. It's just say it runs a cover for operations that are taking place by way of media, so on and so forth. You have to remember the media is already it's already usurped and a tool for government. It really is.
Yeah.
It was reported to the public that the media was for accountability of the government entity, but it never happened that way. Okay, you have some honest reporters that quickly, you mess with their pay and they're gonna change. So they're bought and paid for. They're not going to go outside the lines of what they're told they can talk about, this, that, and the other. But as far as implanting false stories, absolutely. They can actually present to the United States a false narrative concerning any foreign entity. And then they can prohibit any changes to that false narrative, which means anybody who attempts to change it can be jailed. Now, the sad part about this is not new. This has been in operation for a long time. A long time. And which is why our last president kept saying what he said, because he was telling people, listen, this is propaganda. Don't live your life based on propaganda. Don't do that. And because all it's going to do is get people heated up, on fire. They fight each other. We tear down the country, sit around looking stupid at each other, saying, well, what happened? What did we do this for? In the meanwhile, you have other countries out there that are hungry. And, there's sad news about the United States compared to China. Very sad news. And it did not come from somebody sitting on the sidelines. This came from some deep departmental individuals who are so concerned right now. It's not funny. China is, China is not to be toyed with. I'll put it that way.
That's right.
We're not looking good right now. And so people are going to begin to notice that, they could potentially strike up anything to distract us, to keep our minds off some of the real issues that we're facing. And while the Middle East is starting to blow up, Pastor Paul, because in Revelation, I'll say it again, no one can trample Israel underfoot with the USA around.
No, that's right.
How in the world can they be trampled underfoot 40 in 2 months? 40 in 2 months, and no one intercedes. What happened to the U.S. in that prophecy? What happened?
I think what happens
on that matter.
Well, I think, Mike, a couple of things. One, we're being sold out, and we're surrendering our power, if you will, economically, morally, militarily, through technology, and also I think that we'll be held hostage. I mean, I think that at some point they'll be like, no, you leave us alone. We're going to handle Israel the way we want to handle Israel, and you guys have to back off. And I think part of that is an internal selling out of Israel, which I think is what helps fulfill biblical prophecy for that short period. Now, maybe there's a change. Maybe there's a reversal in that 3.5-year period. But I think, Mike, you're onto something here. How in the world does that happen, that Israel doesn't have a true partner that, really gets in there and fights for them, but has to stand down? Is there a technological advancement, some kind of leverage over the what's your thoughts?
Well, you got to ask yourself, what could cause us not to be able to use military power in the Middle East to protect Israel, right? What could cause us to stay in our corner? Here's my belief on this. In the Bible, it says that God resists the proud. Simply put, we stopped telling the truth, and we're now operating by pride. We're boasting too much. We're not operating. We used to operate by standards of integrity,
right? And
slowly but surely, that's been totally eroded. We're now where infighting begins. That's where honesty is eroded. And when we stop to being honest with ourselves, we kind of drop the ball with that. And all that began with kicking God out of the picture. He's not centric to our views. He's not been that way for a long time. A lot of people thought that we could survive without having God as our centric anchor. But immorality has spread all throughout the USA. One thing I don't like about Washington is that they make certain things okay that should not be okay. I'm not saying that that's people who do this, because I understand this is a spiritual fight, but there's certain standards we are to teach our young, and they grow up a different way. But if you don't, if with the broken homes that we had, with the encouragement of suing everybody and all these lawyers getting rich from divorces, that's where it began, tearing down the family units.
Yeah.
And it just spread all over the place. And so now we sit in a position where China has matched us in a very important piece of military technology. And now we have a real problem, which is why some of the ships are being redeployed here shortly, because somebody's going to call our bluff is what's going to happen until we finally wake up and stop being so prideful. And then I believe at the end of that 3.5 years, here's what I believe. At the end of that 3.5 years, we're going to be a type of tiding, a type of relief for what's happening in the Middle East. I believe that's going to be a time that we're going to get ourselves together. We're going to be changed big time, but we're going to get ourselves together. And we certainly won't be like we are now. It's going to change here in this country, and all this stuff that we're going through, all of it's going to be torn down, because we're doing that ourselves.
Yeah.
We're doing that ourselves.
Revelation chapter 11, Mike, as you're talking about this 3.5 years or 1,260 days, or Daniel calls it times, and half time. It says in the book of Revelation, it starts talking about the temple being built, the third temple. Tells you that it tells you the size of it. There's no outer court. There's these 2 olive branches, or 2 olive trees, the 2 candlesticks, the 2 witnesses who will be preaching Jesus Christ and his soon return. And they'll be preaching with great power. They'll be sending plagues on the earth. And so there's going to be some chaos going on, Mike, it sounds like. A great spiritual turmoil going on at the same time. And the Gentiles will be walking around for 42 months. It tells you right there in verse 2. This is Revelation 11:2. Says, the court which is without the temple leave out, and measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread underfoot 40 and 2 months. Mm-hmm. So there's a temple built, and I just saw, and I was just talking to somebody yesterday, that Saudi Arabia, the Saudi Arabia, and there was 3 other nations. We're hearing 4 more nations are about to sign another covenant with Israel, which includes Saudi Arabia, is the rumor. I don't know, maybe you have more info on this. But in this, it really opens up a door for Israel to be allowed to build their third temple. It removes Jordan from being in charge of monitoring the Temple Mount and lets Saudi Arabia be the nation that will monitor it. I'm sure there's a lot more complexity about how all the economic advantages for everyone involved in the region. And Trump, it's all part of this an extension to the Abraham Accords. And my question is, when I heard this, is, yeah, but who else is involved? Well, I found out the Vatican's involved. The Vatican's also wants to be a part of that, because they want a piece of the Temple Mount as well. Some kind of access and recognition. So you would have the Dome of the Rock, you would have the Al-Aqsa Mosque, you would have the third temple, no outer court, because that's for the Gentiles. Maybe there's some other kind of ceremonial area for the Vatican or for the Gentiles. So are you hearing anything about another 4 nations about to put together another deal with Israel?
I think that eventually, for the sake, it's under the banner of economics right now. That's what it's under the banner of. But you know what it sounds like to me, Pastor Paul?
Yeah.
It sounds like peace and safety.
Yeah.
What do they say all the time? What did they just said this week about these deals in the Middle East? This could actually be peace and security.
Right.
That's peace and safety. That's what it is. They keep uttering this phrase on a continuous basis. And the day Saudi Arabia is moved to manage that temple, that same week, you watch what happens. It'll be a calamity like this world has never seen. has never seen, because Israel and Russia already said they're not going to tolerate it. That was one of the talks, one of the conversations. That is, one of those real harsh and deadly conversations. So there's a good outlook that man wants, but then there's the actuality of what prophecy is. And so, yeah, it's going to be a very contentious time.
Can we talk about your dream? I'm bombarded every week with at least 15 emails. Could you ask Mike who was in the casket? Mike, are we any closer to understanding this dream? In your opinion, has the
plague? I think we're going to understand it perfectly soon. You know what? Just the other day, there were 3 armed individuals, not 1, 3, outside of the vice president's private residence. There was an individual who, part of the explanation for Joe Biden is Joe Biden needs extended security. Do you know this?
Okay.
Joe Biden has too many death threats coming in his direction, and they're not just these are death threats. Not to mention that, but you have a war has begun, because you have some that were in the Republican Party who have to have strong security right now. They can't even move around on their own anymore. It's almost like they have to stay home. They can't even go out. So it's become so bad that people are actually trying to really set up to kill one of these individuals, somebody that really matters. And that's almost like a plague to me, because when I had that dream and when they draped that flag, when that flag was draped through that coffin, I saw that face. I've never seen a face in a casket before, but it seemed like it was almost during that time, it was too militant. Was what the feeling was. It was just too militant. In other words, it was almost like a different force took over at that very moment. I mean, a total different force. A force that does not listen to anybody else. It just dictates everything. That's the type of force that took over. And that's what was disturbing, because there was another Pastor Paul dream it kind of segued into that. And the bad part about these dreams, I never say they're from the Lord until they come to pass, right? I do that on purpose. But for example, the dream about you, and with the shirt with the pineapples on it, of all shirts. Are you kidding?
Wait, are you serious? I wore that last Thursday.
Angela and I this was in 2011. You do understand this. This was it 10 or 11? I'd have to get Angela and clarify. This is 2011. I told her about the dream. I didn't even know you then.
Right.
And she says, "Ooh, well, let me introduce you to so-and-so." I said, "What do you mean?" So we listened to you. You said, "What? Are you serious?" And I said, "Oh, my Lord, that's the voice." I said, "Are you kidding? That is the voice.
Okay.
That's the guy." And, but you were on this boat coming around the corner. On the boat, because everybody was waiting for you. I even saw Heidi in the dream sitting down she was sitting down with a bunch of children and people, and it was a gathering is what it was. And the funny thing about the gathering again was they would come like they were. Some had not so good clothes on, some didn't, but they were changing the entire time they were sitting there. They were changing. Everybody was changing. It was like everything was becoming very clean, very pure.
What kind of a boat was it, Mike? When
you came around at the same time the sun was falling.
What?
Right? The sun was going down when you were coming around the corner, but everybody was waiting for you to come on that boat. I didn't know you were coming on a boat, and then I look at the boat, and I see this guy on the boat saying, "Are you serious? What?" He kept hollering that. I heard that first, and then he came around the corner, and he had that, I called it the Hawaii 5-0 shirt. That's what I called that pineapple shirt. You came around the corner. At that time when you came around the corner, the sun totally went down. I mean, it just totally went down. And that was the end of that matter. It just totally went down. All those. Now, here's the bad part, though. These people were gathering together. It was daytime. It was summer. It was hot. And as they would gather together, they would change. Their countenance was changing. At first, some were very sad. Some were addicted. Some were alcoholics. And they were changing. Their clothing was changing. They were changing. Families were there, children were there, but some people kept getting up to go back to take care of things. They never made it back, and I saw what was taking them. but they never made it back. Internally, they were making excuses. Some people needed to go back to get their medication, and it was almost like I was putting every single person who wanted to go back, and I could see what they were doing. So they didn't want to wait for they didn't want to sit with the meeting, because that was it. Everybody knew they were not coming, that this was it. Everybody knew it. But some people said, well, just in case, I need my medication, I'm going to go and get it because I might start feeling bad. I remember a guy who said that. He said, I might start feeling bad. He would start to feel icky if he didn't have his medication, kind of icky. And I could feel it in my body. And I was like, what is this feeling? It felt awful, too. So he went back and went to the drawer, got his medication. He never came back. There were these things, these black, oily things that were falling from the heavens. These folks that went back to go take care of things, they were taken over. They never came back. They were taken over.
Wow.
This one lady went back to go balance her checkbook and to withdraw some extra cash from the ATM. She never came back. Other folks were grabbing other things. They never made it back. And it was so sad, because as I caught on to these people leaving, and I was trying to stop them, but I was put in their bodies. It seemed like I was going through their experience.
Yeah, I've had that.
Some people would not. The one guy was addicted to something, and he was sitting there in the meeting with his kids to his left and to his right. He never told his family. He went back to go get some medication, and he was frightened that he was going to go through withdrawals. So he was going to leave his family to go back and get medication and come back. And it was so sad, because I was trying to get this guy to stop, to not do it. But, of course, I couldn't say anything. Well, when the sun began to fall, you came around the corner. And right when you cornered, everybody looked and they saw the boat. And it was like, that's when really everything began to change. And then the sun dropped and went all the way down, and there was just nothing was left. That was it. But there were no people either. There was it. There was nothing left. So
was this a boat that I was trying to get people to get on?
No, you were coming around the boat.
I was coming around. Okay.
You were coming around the water on a boat in a city. It was a city. You were on the boat in a city and people were there sitting and everything. And nothing was going to happen until you came around that corner. And when you came around the corner, the sun dropped right when you came around the corner.
Wow.
Right when you came around the corner.
And I was wearing a pineapple
shirt.
Mike, you have to understand, I didn't know any of that. Last Thursday night was the first time I've ever wore a pineapple shirt in my life. Okay?
Do you remember the time when you were going to Florida and I saw your shirt? And I had to tell you, I said, Pastor Paul, that almost looks like the shirt.
Yeah.
In the dream,
yes.
Almost.
Yes.
It wasn't the shirt. And but when that pineapple shirt is what you had on when you were in there. And so ever since that dream, okay, I've been kind of messed up.
That's 10 years. That's been 10 years.
Yeah,
You've been messed up waiting on a pineapple shirt.
Yeah. So there you go.
Is the sun about ready to fall? Is time running out? And notice something. Jesus said in the Bible, don't go back to your house and try to get your clothes and try to get your stuff. It's too late. If you go back, don't go. If you're in the rooftop, don't go down in. You better go. Okay. Now I understand that's talking about the period of time whenever it's believed to be the Jews fleeing out of Judea, but it kind of sounds very familiar to what you're saying. Is people are still with the coming of the Lord this close. They're still running back to get something. They're always running back. I need one more. I can't make it without this. I can't make it without that. Yeah. They're not putting their trust in Jesus. They're not being ready. They're missing it. Are people going to miss heaven simply because they didn't have faith to stick around and wait?
Pastor, that's the smallest issue that can cause a person to have a reservation, right, from getting away from the assembly is all it takes. In other words, how can I put this? If there are a lot of people out there, and some people out there, they're Christians, they love the Lord with all of what they are. But I have to say this because this went through my mind in this guy's body. There is something the Lord has told all of his children, every single last one of them. And I don't know this for each person for fact. I just trust the Lord's word. God has given, he has had us to understand that there's something in our lives that we have to get rid of. And about maybe 2 to 3 times in our lifetime, he has told us, you cannot have that and come into the kingdom. And he has told us, and if they don't get rid of it prior to the time he's coming back, they're not going. And I think, I really do believe that there are too many people who have not acted on it. They keep saying, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it next week. It could be forgiveness. It could be whatever it is. The Lord has communicated to everybody that there's something they cannot enter into the kingdom with. And in fact, when this guy had it with that for him, it was medication. Withdrawals or no withdrawals. You see, the Lord didn't say he would heal him. This guy was going to undergo those withdrawals, but he didn't want to do it. And the Lord had told this guy, you can't enter into the kingdom with that, not because it's a drug, not because you're addicted to it, because you're choosing it over me. You will not wait upon me. You have no patience to wait upon me, because that thing is dividing you from me.
So in other words, anything that we would, and this could we just look at this in a broader spectrum, anything that we put ahead of God or above God, we can't do. We have to always put God first of everything. First, God.
There was another guy who had a family, but there was a girl, and he just went back to say bye to the girl, and he never made it back. He never made it back. And what was so, these dreams, that one, the one about you, was one of the highlights. That's why the one with this casket is such a burden.
Yeah. Because
the conditions surrounding this thing is just not good. It's just not good. That's when everything changes. And it segues into this. The other dream that goes with it, take 1 minute. The other dream that goes with it, I was coming out of an airport, and these people came from nowhere. They were of every walk of life, and they took over everything. They didn't speak to a soul. Pastor Paul, the guy looked at me, and he said, you get out of here and never come back. Right? That's all he said. But I didn't get out quick enough. And guess what happened? I was thrown into a house with this old lady. They came in and they beheaded that old lady. Everybody was watching their television. Nobody knew what was happening. They took over everything. It was almost, they were sitting in this country from every walk of life, but they were serving something else. And it's like, just like a snap of a finger, they began to take things over. You're talking about soldiers, executives, people that work at gas stations, people shopping in grocery stores. They changed and they took over everything, and nobody was able to do anything about it because they were so quick.
They were like sleeper cells? Were they like?
They were unified. But this was, think of a sleeper cell that's spiritual. These people were unified, and they had zero emotions on their face, and they would just
cold.
They would kill you at a drop of a dime. They had no regard for anything. If they said something and you didn't act quick enough, that was the end of you. That's how these people were. They didn't care about you. And that was the weirdest dream. That was the strangest set of circumstances I ever saw. The problem was this same dream I had 3 times. 3 times.
Uh-oh.
3 times back to back. And so the first time I didn't, I just didn't, I said, ew. The second time it caught my attention. The third time it was just sad because everybody was doing their own thing and they couldn't recognize anything. It's almost like they weren't paying attention to anything. And these people took over. Nobody ever saw them coming. Nobody. And one of the feelings I got from that was that element is already among us. Already among us.
Yeah, it is.
And it will activate. When it activates, there's nothing we can do about it. Which strengthens, it causes a person like me to put everything I am in Christ with no reservations about anything else, because I know there's no logical way to get out of that situation.
Where it proves in this dream, and the Bible talks about these dreams and visions. Rhonda Ebsen just had one where I was in it, where where God showed her that the phone was ringing, that something very important, a message was coming. I mean, you're sharing a dream from 10 years ago, before you ever met me, and then you found me, and we've been talking ever since, and God's revealed so much. And it's been a great relationship so that we can win so many people to Christ. But I think what I'm hearing in your voice tonight is a major sense of urgency, No more playing around. People have got to get saved. The urgency is right now. And then you got a confirmation again with the pineapple shirt last week. But you had already had several confirmations up until then. It should send a message, though. Maybe this was part of the confirmation that the sun is about to go down. As we know it, time as we know it is about to come to an end of this era. And people better get on board. And it's too late to run back and try to do something else. One last moment. It's time to get in.
Pastor Paul, I strongly believe that. I believe that in truth. I know it's a heavy statement, but in truth, there is no preparatory action one can take to get ready for what's coming. It'll come out of season. It's not coming in season. It's coming at a time where people are not thinking of it, which means it's going to happen before we expect it.
An hour you think not, the Son of Man will come. The end will come.
I believe that's right. We're at that. We crossed something, and we're in that zone right now, which puts us in a very because everything right now, if everybody takes a look, everything is different. Everything is different now. I mean everything. And that will increase itself this week. These next 8 days, watch what happens. It'll continue to increase and become highly unstable. Maybe that will jar some folks, because I also know spiritually people are trying to find something to ignite themselves for the Lord again. Right. They're trying to find something, but there's a supernatural force that's almost like it's putting out a candle, like putting out people's flames, and they have to keep that ignited. That comes by choice. That comes by choice.
Folks, Mike, you're going to be part of this climate chaos. You say you've got some new charts or presentation. Tell us what you're going to, not what you're going to show us, but you're going to reveal something to us in this April 23rd, 24th Climate Chaos webinar.
There's some relationships and a lot of facts that people need to know about, some relationships and facts. And once they see the relationship and facts, I think they'll understand. We're in a very, very devious and dangerous and deceptive time right now, very deceptive time. And believe me when I say that when people look up into the heavens, things are not what they appear to be. It looks peaceful, doesn't it? It looks very peaceful.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's by no means peaceful at all. And so that people, they need to understand the relationship between a few things regarding the weather, regarding the changes, not only the changes they see, because by the time you have the conference, they're going to know what changes are. They won't make that mistake. But the suffering begins also. Weather storms that cause massive sufferings back to back, that's gonna really become all too real for a great many people. But I just hope that everybody stays under the banner of Christ and the cross for real, especially in this time. Please don't go to sleep this time. No one go to sleep.
Don't go to sleep, folks, and be ready for this climate chaos webinar we're going to have. Matter of fact, next Thursday when Mike is going to join us, Steve Quayle, we're going to do a doubleheader next Thursday since we got blocked on my main channel for 7 days. So I'm going to go back to the main channel next Thursday night. We'll be back on there. We should be back on there Sunday night. So next Thursday night, we're going to start an hour early at 8:30 and bring on Steve Quayle to talk about, he's also one of the speakers in the Climate Chaos webinar. We're going to bring Steve Quayle on at 8:30. And then we're going to bring Mike from around the world back in as he normally does at 10:15 or so. Eastern. So it's a doubleheader next Thursday night. So 8 days. All right, Mike, you just gave us an 8-day warning for something. We're gonna keep our eyes open. You got me turning every which way but loose at this moment right now from all this information. But it also is a wake up for me to be. It's also a confirmation for me to stay on point and stay ready and keep pushing forward. The truth of Jesus Christ is coming. Because time's running out. So
absolutely.
See you next week, Mike.
Me too. Sure will. God bless you, Pastor.
God bless you. Thank you, brother.